Hey students, this is lesson 9.6, the quadratic formula and the discriminant. We're going to learn how to solve any quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Let's quickly do this review here. I think there's some things on here you might have some trouble with, so I'm just going to go through them with you. It says, number one says, what are some advantages to use a formula to express something like the area of a rectangle? An advantage would be you can use it on any rectangle. So there's universal application. All right, big vocab word here, discriminant. The discriminant of the equation, and this is a quadratic equation written in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, and you're going to find out later why that is. But just right now, just so you know that, if you do b squared minus 4 times a times c, where a is the coefficient of the quadratic term, b is the coefficient of the linear term, and c is the constant, then b squared minus 4ac is the discriminant. And the cool thing about the discriminant is it tells you how many solutions you're going to have. If the discriminant is a positive number, you'll have 2 solutions. If it's 0, you'll have 1 solution. If it's a negative number, then you'll have 0 solutions. So we're going to use that right here. Remember, this discriminant is this b squared minus 4 times a times c. So here's a in this problem, here's b, and here's c. Of course, c is -9. So we're going to do b squared, so 3 squared minus 4 times 5 times -9. And we have a negative here and a negative there, so that'll be positive. So we're going to have 9 plus 4 times 5 times 9 makes 405. And that's a positive number, so there's going to be 2 solutions on that one. Number 3, in this one, a is 3, b is -2, and c is 7. So b squared minus 4ac, that's going to be -2 squared minus 4 times 3 times 7. When we do that, we get -80. And since it's a negative number, there are going to be 0 solutions to that quadratic equation. In this one, we're going to say a is 1 here, and b is -4, and c is -6. So when we do b squared, we're going to have -4 squared minus, notice how I always put that in parentheses, because otherwise, if you would do that on a calculator without parentheses, you'd get a negative number, which would be incorrect. -4 times 1 times -6. And you simplify that, you get 40, so there's going to be 2 solutions to that. All right, this is about the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is a formula that's derived from the standard form of the equation. In your packet, you'll see the quadratic formula. I'm not seeing it here. So, but basically, if you were to solve this equation, the general form, by completing the square, you would end up with x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. There's that discriminant underneath the radical sign, with the whole thing divided by 2a. Notice there's a plus and a minus, which gives us the possibility of 2 solutions. And we're going to use that to solve some equations. Okay, so in order to use this, you need your equation to be in standard form. And you need to identify what a is, what b is, and what c is. In this problem, a is the coefficient of the squared term, the quadratic term, so a is 1. b is the coefficient of the linear term, which is -3, and c equals the constant, which is -10. And the reason those are negative is because in standard form, we have addition. So we're actually adding a negative there. All right, and then we're going to use this quadratic formula, which says x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And this is a little tricky. It does take some work to make sure you're getting the right signs and all that. So for this problem, we're going to substitute negative 3 for b. So we're going to have the opposite of negative 3. And I'll just do it like that, but you should know that that's just 3 when you simplify. Plus or minus the square root of, and since it's a negative, I'm going to put parentheses there, minus 4 times a. And if we just use parentheses for all our substitutions, the signs will not be as much of a problem for us. So 4 times a is 1, and c is negative 10. That whole thing divided by 2 times a is negative, is 1. All right, let's just simplify as much as we can. The opposite of negative 3 is 3, plus or minus. If we do negative 3 squared, that's 9. And if we do, notice we have 2 negatives over here, so that's going to be positive 40. So we're going to have 9 plus 40. And divided by 2. And I really have 2 equations here because of the plus or minus, so I have 3 plus the square root of 49, which is 7, divided by 2, and 3 minus 7 divided by 2. And so simplifying those two, I get 10 divided by 2 is 5, so x is equal to 5, and x is equal to 3 minus 7 is negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. All right, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to let you try it. Try and figure out what a, b, and c are, plug it in, and find the solutions. All right, this is a handy equation to have when we're modeling situations where we have objects in motion, because the equations are quadratic in a lot of cases. So here's the problem. Jacob tosses the baseball across the playground. The arc of the ball can be modeled by the equation y equals negative 0.05x squared plus 0.75x plus 4, where x is the horizontal distance in meters from Jacob and y is the height. How far from Jacob does the ball land? I'm just going to do a quick graph of this so we can kind of get an idea what this looks like. So Jacob tosses the ball. So let's say right here is the height of his hand when he lets go of the ball. And he throws it across the playground. And it's going to make an arc like this and eventually hit the ground. Well, the information we need to solve this is, right here would be 0 feet from Jacob, and over here is where it lands, so this is what we're actually looking for, our x value. This is the height where it starts right here, and when it lands, the height is right here, which is 0. So the output is 0 when we get the solution, when it lands, which means that y is equal to 0 means the ball has landed, or it means the ball has just been thrown, or before it was thrown. But anyway, so we're going to just substitute 0 for y, and we get this equation. Negative 0.05x squared plus 0.75x plus 4 is equal to 0. And that's in standard form, so we're going to use the quadratic formula. A is negative 0.05, B is 0.75, and C is 4. And so x is equal to the opposite of b. So that would be negative 0.75 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So 0.75 squared, since it's positive, I don't need parentheses there, minus 4 times a, which is negative 0.05, times c, which is 4, I'll do a parentheses there because of those decimals, and all that divided by 2 times a, which is negative 0.05. Okay, so we're going to simplify this, and you're going to have to use your calculator to do this carefully. When you do 0.75 squared minus 4 times negative 0.05, and you should try this. Go ahead and do it on your calculator if you want to pause right now. You have to do it carefully, otherwise the signs will get in the way. And you know, if you have the square root of a negative number, there won't be an answer. So it's important that you get this right. But if you do all that correctly, you should get 1.3625 there. And then you're going to divide that by 2 times negative 0.05, which is negative 0.1. And if I simplify that, so I'm going to do negative 0.75 minus the square root, that's going to be a negative value. But when I divide that by negative, it'll become positive. So, so right now on my calculator, I'm going to do negative 0.75 plus the square root of 1.3625 divided by negative 1, and that'll give me negative 4.2 about. And the other solution will be 19.2. And this is in meters, so that's the one I want. This one is actually back here before the ball started back in the negatives, and so we don't want that one. All right, I'm going to let you try that. I'll pause here. All right, there are many methods for solving quadratic equation. You can always use quadratic formula, but sometimes there's a lot easier ways to do it. So here's our rules of thumb, and you need to know these. You're going to go ahead and use graphing if you have a graphing calculator handy, and all of the other things aren't very convenient except quadratic formula. So square roots you'll use if the equation has no x term. Factoring you'll use if you can easily factor it. Completing square you'll use if the x squared coefficient is 1. In other words, you just have x squared plus something times x. And you cannot easily factor it. And the quadratic formula, you can really use that at any time, but only use it if some of the other methods aren't very convenient. So let's look at these and just figure out what we want to do. In this one, there is no x term. So this one, we would use square roots. In the second one, notice that this coefficient is 3. That makes it hard to factor, and it makes it a lot easier, or the easiest, quickest way to solve that is either the quadratic formula or your graphing calculator. And we'll spend some time learning how to do that. So see, that one, I think that factors pretty easily because 10 has factors 2 and 5, which add up to 7. So that one we would factor. D would not factor very easily because wouldn't factor at all, I don't think, because there's no factors of negative 15 that add up to 4. I'm thinking 3 and 5. 1 and 15, no. So that one we would complete the square because the coefficient of the x term is 1. So complete the square there. And the last one, there is no x term in that one, so we are going to use square roots to solve that. All right, I'll let you try and decide what you think is best here. I'll pause. Actually, you pause, and I'll just arrow in the answers quickly. Okay, The last thing we're going to learn how to do is how to use the discriminant. The discriminant is, in our quadratic formula, is the part under the square root. And discriminant is a form of the word discriminate, which means to separate out or see differences. And what the differences we're going to see is how many solutions we can have from each equation. Okay? You cannot take the square root of a negative. So if b squared minus 4ac is a negative number, then there are no solutions. So, and let's just write that down here. If it's negative, then no solutions. If it's 0, then there's one solution, because when you add and subtract 0, you get the same thing. So that makes sense. And if it's positive, you get 2 solutions. So the discriminants can help us tell whether we need to do any more work or not, because we're not going to go through the process of using quadratic formula or completing the square if we know there's no solution. So let's take a look at this problem. A is 2, B is 7, C is negative 15. And so we're going to substitute that into the discriminant to see how many solutions there are. So we're going to do 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 15. And we do that, that equals 169, which is a positive number. So that tells us there will be 2 solutions. All right, go ahead, you try that. See if you can find the number of solutions here. You should have found there are 2 solutions because it's a positive number. All right, question check. What method would you use to solve this equation? If C is 14. So with 14, we would get this. And you should pause and try this on your own. And in that case, I would factor, because the factors of 14, x squared plus 9x plus 14 equals x equals that, so it's easily factorable. So that's why we would use that method. Easy to factor. All right, if c equals 7, then we have x squared plus 9x plus 7 equals 0. And in that case, I would complete the square because it's not factorable. And this coefficient of the squared term is 1. All right, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow.